Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today. Get this.
Yeah.
Into the world of emotions.
Emotions.
Yeah. Well, emotional intelligence, actually. It's all based on Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. And, we'll see how, understanding and managing emotions can, lead to better relationships, maybe help us be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe even be healthier. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might be surprised, right?
Yeah.
By how much our emotions really, influence everything we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, right? We often think of emotions as kind of fleeting things, almost whimsical, but they're actually, they're really intertwined with how we learn, how we make decisions, even how we understand, just the world around us, really.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I got to admit, sometimes my emotions feel, a lot more like an obstacle than a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm super stressed and everything just feels like this massive problem.
Yeah.
Or I totally react without even thinking, and then I say something I totally regret.
Yeah.
Is that what Goleman means by emotional intelligence? Knowing how to control, those moments?
He actually uses this really good analogy of a juggler to explain that feeling, I think.
Okay.
When we're kind of flooded with all these intense emotions, it's almost like our mind is like juggling way too many balls at once.
Right.
And so it makes it harder to think clearly. And that's really where emotional intelligence comes in, or, EI.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a set of tools to manage our emotions so they work for us, not against us.
Okay, so EI is more than just, keeping your cool when things get crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's about, understanding why you feel the way you feel. And then actually using those emotions in a positive way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So what are some of the tools Goleman talks about?
Well, one of the foundations is really being able to recognize and name your, it's like if you have a pressure cooker and there's no release valve, it's like that if you can't even acknowledge what you're going through.
So step one is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Putting a label on those emotions.
Yeah.
But then what? How do we actually use that awareness to manage our reactions?
Well, that's where this idea of reframing comes in.
Okay.
It's a cognitive technique that helps us to kind of challenge and change, negative thought patterns.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, a friend doesn't say hi to you on the
right.
Your initial reaction might be, hurt or anger.
Right.
But if you kind of pause and reframe that whole situation, maybe they were just distracted.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't see you. And then your emotional response will probably shift too.
So it's about taking a step back before you jump to all those conclusions.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of reminds me of that example that Goleman uses about mistaking a sheep for a ghost when you're scared.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Your emotional brain goes into total overdrive.
Yeah.
And it distorts your perception before your rational mind can even catch up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And sometimes, those reactions are actually rooted in past experience, even from childhood. So Goleman actually gives this example of a man who was bullied as a child.
Okay.
And even though he's an adult now, if he encounters his former bully, it might still trigger those old feelings of, fear, vulnerability.
Wow.
And it really highlights how much, our past can actually influence our present emotional response.
It's like we're, carrying around all this emotional baggage from our past.
Yeah.
And it could, totally color how we see the world.
Yeah.
So if understanding our emotions is the first step, what's next?
Right.
In developing this whole emotional intelligence thing?
Well, it's not just enough to recognize what you're feeling.
Yeah.
You need to understand, the why.
Okay.
And really digging deeper into, what causes those emotions can give you a lot more control over them.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
It's instead of just, reacting to a situation, you're actually taking the time to process it.
Exactly.
Figure out, what's driving your emotional response in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. And once you understand, the why, then you can start to use your emotions to actually achieve your goals.
Okay.
So you can think of a student who is struggling to write, a boring paper, and instead of procrastinating, right, they use their understanding of their own emotions to actually reframe the assignment.
Wow.
Find an angle that sparks their interest, and then, tap into that power of delayed gratification.
So they're basically turning their emotional energy into fuel for their, for their aspirations.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not letting their feelings control them.
Yeah.
They're using those feelings to motivate themselves. I can totally see how that ties into this whole idea of emotional intelligence as a key to success.
It's a much bigger picture than just, managing anger or staying calm. EI really influences how we learn, how we interact with other people, even how we cope with stress.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I bet there are people out there who are thinking, okay, sure, emotions, yeah, they're important.
Yeah.
But isn't IQ, your brain power, the real key to success?
Right.
Like, what does Goleman say about that?
Actually, he challenges that notion pretty directly.
Okay.
He points to studies showing that students with high EI actually tend to outperform, their peers who have similar IQs.
Oh, wow.
And then there's that famous Stanford marshmallow experiment. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Where the researchers, they gave these kids the option of, eating one marshmallow right now.
Right.
Or waiting and getting two later.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Right.
So it turned out that the kids who could delay gratification ended up doing better later in life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And it really showed that that impulse control, which is a key element of emotional intelligence,
right,
could actually predict long-term success more accurately than IQ.
Wow.
And those benefits, they aren't limited to just academics either.
Right.
You think about the workplace.
Yeah.
Emotionally intelligent managers are just better, at motivating teams, at resolving conflicts, creating, positive environments.
Oh, so it's not just about being book smart. It's about being people smart, too.
Yeah, for sure.
And if I'm hearing you correctly, those benefits extend beyond our careers and into our personal lives as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's actually growing research linking high EI to better overall well-being, especially when it comes to things like stress management. Goleman, he highlights how chronic stress can negatively impact our physical health, increasing the risk of everything from, heart disease to a weakened immune system.
Wait, so my emotional state can actually affect my physical health?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
I knew stress was bad, but I had no idea it was connected to all that.
It's a much deeper connection than a lot of people realize.
Wow.
Goleman even cites these studies where heart attack survivors who received anger management training had significantly lower risks of having another heart.
That's amazing.
It really shows just how powerful those mind-body connections.
Wow, that's incredible. It really makes you think about emotions in a whole new light.
Definitely.
This is definitely making me want to learn more about how my own emotional intelligence works.
Yeah.
But before we go any further, I'd love to kind of get a little bit more specific about how our brains are actually wired for this whole emotional intelligence thing.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that actually leads us to one of the most I think fascinating parts of Goleman's work, which is that interplay between our emotional and our rational brain. It's amazing, how our brains are designed for this sort of constant dance between emotion and reason.
Okay.
And there are these strong neuronal pathways that actually connect the emotional centers of our brains, like the amygdala, to the prefrontal cortex, which handles things like planning and decision making.
So, is there a communication highway between the part of my brain that's totally freaking out?
Yeah.
And the part that's trying to stay calm?
That's a great way to put it. And the strength of that connection, the quality of that communication, that's a big part of what determines our emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Goleman actually uses this term emotional hijacking to describe what happens when the amygdala, our emotional center, just takes overrides the prefrontal cortex, our rational brain.
Emotional hijacking? That sounds intense. Is that what's happening when I snap at someone and then instantly regret it?
It could be. It's like our emotional brain just slams on the gas pedal before our thinking brain has a chance to even process what's going on.
Wow.
And Goleman points out that that damage to those pathways, like in the lobotomy patients we were talking about earlier, can really, really impair emotional intelligence.
Okay.
They lose that ability to regulate them, to understand social cues.
It's not just about being emotional. It's about being able to manage those emotions effectively.
Yeah.
So how does my thinking brain get back in the driver's seat after an emotional hijacking?
Well, it takes practice, right?
Yeah.
But the more we strengthen those connections between the emotional and the rational parts of our brains, the better we get at it. Think about it this way. You're walking alone at night.
Okay.
And you hear this sudden loud bang.
Right.
And your emotional brain kicks right into gear. Your heart's racing. You're feeling fear.
Oh, yeah.
But then your thinking brain catches up.
Okay.
right? Assesses the situation and realizes, oh, it was just a car backfiring.
Right, right.
And it sends a signal to your emotional brain, calming it down.
So it's like my thinking brain is the adult in the room trying to soothe the scared kid who
Yes,
just like jumped at a shadow.
exactly. And that ability to regulate our emotions, right? To not let them completely run the show, that is, a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. And Goleman actually suggests some pretty interesting techniques for, developing that skill.
Okay, like what?
One of them is called inner dialogue, which is basically about, becoming more aware of your thoughts and your feelings, just observing them without judgment.
So instead of just letting those like, negative thoughts spiral out of control,
Yeah.
you pause and say, hey, why am I feeling this?
Exactly. You kind of challenge those automatic negative thoughts and see if there's, maybe another way to look at the situation. So let's say you're feeling hurt because a friend confided in someone else and not you.
Oh.
And, an inner dialogue might sound something like, okay, I'm feeling left out, but, maybe my friend had a good reason, or maybe they just didn't even realize how this would make me feel.
Right. So instead of like, stewing in all those negative emotions, you're taking a moment to understand them.
Yeah.
And that can help you, respond in a more healthy way.
Absolutely. And that's key, right? It's about understanding them so you can then manage them.
What other techniques does Goleman suggest?
Well, he also talks about the power of mirroring body language
Okay.
to actually enhance empathy.
Mirroring body language.
Have you ever noticed that when you're really connecting with someone,
Yeah.
that you kind of unconsciously mimic their posture, their gestures?
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I have. I never realized it was like a conscious thing you could do to like, increase empathy.
Well, Goleman suggests that that by consciously mirroring the body language of the person you're interacting with, you can actually start to feel what they're feeling.
Really?
It creates this deeper sense of connection and understanding.
That's pretty wild. So like I can actually use my body to tap into someone else's emotional state.
It's pretty powerful stuff.
What else can I do to boost my EI?
Well, another important aspect is how we frame our thinking about, success and failure.
Okay.
Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence that we're, not good enough, Goleman suggests we focus on those changeable factors like effort and strategy.
So it's about shifting to like a growth mindset, believing that I can improve with practice.
Exactly.
Perseverance. That reminds me of something we were talking about earlier, like how those high EI kids in the marshmallow experiment were able to delay gratification.
Right.
They understood that waiting would lead to a bigger reward later on.
Exactly. It's that same principle applied to, a different situation. It's
Wow.
it's about believing in our ability to grow and learn.
Right.
Rather than, getting stuck in those self-limits.
This has been so insightful.
Good.
But I have to admit, all this talk about boosting my EI is making me wonder, what are some of the consequences of low emotional intelligence?
Right.
What happens when people just don't develop these skills?
Well, as you can imagine, low EI can have this sort of ripple effect, impacting not just individuals, but society as a whole. And Goleman, he paints this pretty sobering picture of what can happen when emotional intelligence.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into the dark side of low EI. What does Goleman say about the concept?
Well, he actually draws this connection between declining levels of EI and some pretty serious societal, like the rising rates of violence,
Really?
crime, social dysfunction.
Wait, so you're saying that a lack of emotional intelligence can actually contribute to violence and crime?
There's a strong body of research that supports that connection.
Wow.
Goleman, he cites studies linking EI deficits to delinquency and criminal behavior. He points out that that violent offenders often struggle with impulse control. They have difficulty reading social cues, so that makes them more prone to misinterpreting situations,
Right.
and then reacting aggressively.
That's really concerning. I guess it makes sense if you don't understand your own emotions and you can't empathize with others.
Right.
It would be harder to navigate conflict peacefully.
Exactly, and the implications go beyond crime.
Okay.
Goleman also discusses a link between low EI and substance abuse, particularly heroin addiction.
I'm curious, how How does emotional intelligence play a role in addiction?
Well, research shows that a lot of heroin addicts, they struggle with anger regulation
Okay.
even before they become addicted. And so their difficulty managing their emotions makes them more vulnerable to turning to drugs as a coping mechanism.
That makes sense. It's like, low EI creates this emotional void
Yeah.
that people might try to fill with substances or other unhealthy behaviors.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this actually brings us to one of the most, I think, crucial aspects of Goleman's book, which is the importance of nurturing emotional intelligence in children.
Okay. Let's talk about kids and EI.
Yeah.
What can parents, educators, society as a whole do to help, the next generation develop these critical skills?
Well, Goleman emphasizes that that early childhood is this key period for developing emotional intelligence,
Okay.
and that the environment we create for children plays a vital role.
All right.
And he talks about the power of modeling, meaning that children who grow up surrounded by emotionally intelligent adults
Yeah.
are more likely to develop those skills themselves.
So it's that actions speak louder than words kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kids are watching how we handle our own emotions.
Yeah.
And learning from us.
Exactly. They're little sponges,
Yeah.
They're absorbing everything they see and hear. And the research really backs this. He cites these studies showing that children of emotionally intelligent parents tend to, exhibit greater emotional regulation. They have lower stress levels. They're just generally more well-adjusted.
That makes a lot of sense. It really makes you realize how much, responsibility we have as adults to set a good example. What about kids who haven't had that, that advantage? Are they doomed to struggle with low EI?
Not at all. While early intervention is ideal, Goleman, he really believes that emotional intelligence can be developed and strengthened throughout life.
Yeah.
And he highlights the important role of education,
Okay.
Suggesting programs that teach children how to, recognize and manage their emotions, understand and empathize with others, and build healthy relationships.
So it's like we need to equip kids with this emotional toolkit.
Yeah.
Like give them the skills to navigate the ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
With, resilience and compassion.
Absolutely. He believes that emotionally intelligent children are just more likely to thrive, academically, socially, emotionally.
Yeah.
They become the leaders, the innovators, the problem solvers of tomorrow.
Right.
Contributing to a more, compassionate and just society.
That's really inspiring. It makes you think about, emotional intelligence as this ripple effect.
It is.
When we invest in ourselves and our children, we're actually creating a better world for everyone.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, what about adults who are listening to this?
Yeah.
And realizing, I might have some work to do on my own emotional intelligence.
Right.
What advice does Goleman have for us?
Well, the good news is it's never too late to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And Goleman, he offers a lot of practical advice for adults who want to enhance their own emotional intelligence. And one of the simplest but most effective tips is to practice mindfulness.
Okay, mindfulness. That's a buzzword I hear all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm not always sure what it means in practice. How does it relate to emotional intelligence?
Mindfulness is really about, paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Okay.
It's about, noticing your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, but without, getting swept away by them.
Right.
And it's a really powerful tool for developing self-awareness, which, as we talked about earlier, is the foundation of emotional.
So instead of letting, my emotions control me,
Yeah.
I'm learning to observe them, to understand them.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are some other ways adults can boost their EI?
Well, Goleman talks about the importance of, developing our emotional vocabulary.
Okay.
The more specific we can be about what we're feeling, the better equipped we are to actually manage those.
That makes sense. It's instead of just saying I'm upset, I can say, I'm feeling frustrated because.
Exactly.
Or I'm feeling anxious about.
Yeah, exactly. It gives those emotions more context.
Yeah.
And helps you understand them better.
And it can also help you, communicate your emotions more effectively to others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Goleman also emphasizes the importance of building strong social connections.
I can definitely see how that ties into, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
The better I am at understanding and managing my own emotions, the better I'll be at building healthy relationships with others.
It's a two-way street, Healthy relationships provide this really supportive environment where we can learn and grow emotionally.
Right.
They give us a safe space to practice those EI skills we've been talking about.
This has been such an incredible journey.
Good. I'm glad.
Into the world of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about how much our emotions influence, everything we do. From our, personal relationships to our success in life.
Yeah.
And even, the health of our society as a whole.
It's powerful stuff.
But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts. What's the most important takeaway you want our listeners to remember about EI?
Well, I think for me, the most powerful takeaway is that emotional intelligence it's not this fixed trait that we're, born with.
Right.
It's really a set of skills that we can learn, we can practice, we can strengthen throughout our lives. We're all kind of on this journey of emotional growth. And the more we embrace, these principles of EI, the more fulfilling and meaningful our lives.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, Goleman is giving us this roadmap.
Yeah.
To navigate this, complex world of human emotion.
It is complex.
It really is. And it's not just about, personal growth, is it?
Right.
You mentioned earlier, like how low EI can impact, society as a whole.
Exactly. When we cultivate our own emotional intelligence, it really does have this ripple effect, Yeah. It positively influences not just our own lives, but also the lives of those around us.
Right.
Think about it. It's like dropping a pebble into a pond.
Okay.
And those expanding circles of influence, they can create a more compassionate and understanding world.
That's such a beautiful image.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about, emotional intelligence as this collective endeavor.
Yeah.
Something that we can all, contribute to.
Absolutely. And that actually brings me to a final thought I'd like to leave you with.
Okay, I'm ready.
Imagine a world where emotional intelligence is more than just, a concept we talk about.
Okay.
Imagine it's woven into the fabric of our homes, our schools, our workplaces, and our communities.
Yeah.
What would that world act like?
Right.
How would our interactions with other, even the way we approach challenges, be different?
That's such a powerful question. It challenges us to envision a future where empathy, compassion, and self-awareness are like the norm, not the exception.
Yeah.
A world where we approach, conflict with understanding, and where we support each other's, emotional well-being as much as we prioritize physical health.
It's a vision worth striving for.
It really is.
And while we may not get there overnight, every step we take to develop our own EI, to model those skills for our children and to create, more emotionally intelligent environments, it brings us closer to that reality.
Well said. This deep dive into emotional intelligence has been incredibly eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of, the power of emotion and a renewed sense of hope that, that we can create a world where those emotions are used to build, bridges rather than walls.
That's beautiful. It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise.
And remember, the learning doesn't stop here. I encourage everyone to continue exploring the world of emotional intelligence, put these principles into practice, and to witness the transformative power. First,
thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome.
And for our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your questions, your insights, or even your own aha moments about emotional intelligence on our social media channels. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep learning.